Hello, everybody. This episode does have a few naughty words in it, so if you have little ears around or sensitive ears around, you may want to play this at a different time. This episode is called Diabetes Bullshit or Legit. What do we see, read, hear about type 2 diabetes that may potentially cause more stigmas around diabetes or may potentially just be misinformation or misconceptions about type 2 diabetes? This is something I felt very important to bring into the podcast because I not only want to provide you reliable information, but I also want to combat some of the misinformation that it's out there. So if you see something, read something, hear something, and you want to know, is it BS or legit? What is the deal with this particular thing? Send it to me. type2andU@gmail.com. The link is in the podcast description. You can always go to type2andU.org. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter. Really quickly, before we move on to this episode, I have a very time-sensitive, important announcement to tell you, and that is I am doing a COVID-19 cookbook marathon/giveaway. Yeah, that's a very official name, right? Basically, what it is between this week and next, you can sign up at type2andU.org to win a free cookbook. There are 4 cookbooks that I'm giving away. You can sign up to win one of those on type2andU.org. And next week is the cookbook marathon interview/giveaway. So next week, I will announce the winners. And you can listen to each of the authors talk about their particular cookbook. And for some reason you didn't win, but you like what they talked about or heard about, you'll be able to get links to their cookbooks right there. But I just wanted you to know you've got literally about 5 days to sign up for a chance to win a free cookbook courtesy of Type 2 and You.
Welcome to Type 2 and You with Meg, a diabetes podcast with the tools and guidance you need for your best life with type 2 diabetes. Your host, Megan Munoz, is a Dartmouth-trained health coach and master-prepared certified diabetes educator. She's helped thousands of people turn their diabetes fears, questions, and concerns into hope, confidence, and action. Ready to support your type 2 journey? Here's Meg.
I'm going to start by describing an image to you. And this is something that was traveling around Twitter, and the impression was, or the rumor, I guess you could say, was that this was an image used in training nurses about type 2 diabetes. So this is a slide. If you've ever seen PowerPoint or anything like that, it's basically a presentation slide. And the idea, again, is that this was something that was used in training nurses about type 2 diabetes. So I want you to close your eyes if you can safely. And I want you to imagine a cartoon drawing of someone. And it's a heavier lady who's sitting in this big oversized chair. The chair almost looks like it's kind of crooked or breaking down a little bit. She's got one hand towards her mouth. It looks like she's chewing on something. And the other hand is along the little table sitting beside her, which has got chocolates or some kind of thing on the stand. She's got tons of empty kind of food containers and things like that, utensils around her feet. And along the top of this image, it says type 2 diabetes. Now, along the side of this image is a list. And that list is sedentary lifestyle, which is another way of saying someone that's not very active. Family tendency, which is a way of saying that this is common in someone's family. Average age of 50 years, history of high blood pressure, fatigue, low energy, obese, reoccurrent infections, which is a fancy way of saying you keep having infections, some kind of infection over and over and over again. Polyuria and polydipsia, which are fancy ways of saying you're peeing all the time and you're really, really thirsty all the time. And the last one is fasting blood sugar over 126. So that is the image. Can you see that slide in your head? This cartoon character who's heavy and eating all these things and looks sloppy and sitting in this chair that's kind of breaking down underneath her. Can you imagine that person, and can you see that the way they've described this person? The BS or legit question is this an accurate reflection of type 2 diabetes? Is this an image that should be used in an educational tool to talk about type 2 diabetes and risk factors for type 2 diabetes? I'm going to break it down for a couple things down for you. And then in my takeaway of the day, I'll give you whether it's BS or not. But the first thing we have to tackle is the fact that they only listed a couple of really simple things when it comes to diabetes. They said obese, which is somebody's body size. They said family tendency, which is someone's family history. And then a sedentary lifestyle, so a lifestyle where somebody isn't very active. Those three things were the risk factors for type 2 diabetes. The reality is there's a lot more risk factors than that. In fact, there's a lot more risk factors that you have no control over or no power over versus ones that you do. For example, if you're somebody who's marginalized or stigmatized against based on your race or your ethnicity or your gender orientation or your body size, you're more likely to develop diabetes and you're less likely to get appropriate and timely care. Just your education level can increase your risk for type 2 diabetes. There's almost double the risk of developing type 2 diabetes for people who have a high school education versus people that have a college education. Another example are ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences or adverse childhood events. And those are basically any kind of trauma you experienced as a child. And the more trauma, the higher the risk of diabetes. These things are pieces that are really complicated and complex. Diabetes doesn't develop in a vacuum like it gets portrayed, that it's just weight or what somebody eats causing type 2 diabetes. There's a lot of things that go into causing type 2 diabetes. And these things that I just listed are examples of what pieces of people's worlds affect their risk for type 2 diabetes. And it's not just as simple as weight and your activity level and your family history. The second piece I want to tackle is this stigma about people who are really lazy develop type 2 diabetes, and people with type 2 diabetes are too lazy to take care of themselves. So this lady laying back in the chair, not moving, eating anything in sight, she's just lazy. The reality is people with type 2 diabetes are just as hardworking as anybody else in the population. I know people who started and run their own companies, very successful companies. Look at celebrities, people who work endless hours to make movies or produce music. Halle Berry, Tom Hanks, Viola Davis. I challenge you to think of other people with diabetes and look at their work ethics. My grandmother was somebody that had diabetes, and she was one of the hardest working people that I know. So diabetes and lazy do not go together. Big stigma, big misconception. The last and final piece before we move on to diabetes dilemmas is the idea that this image of this woman sitting in her chair breaking underneath her, eating all these things around her, that really she just ate her way into diabetes. She ate her way into her weight, and she ate her way into diabetes. And is that true? And the one piece that I want to pull out of here, because I've already mentioned the risk factors for type 2 diabetes are much more complex than just what you eat or what your body size is. I want to pull out the weight piece in this one. Well, there was a consensus statement, a joint international consensus statement around ending weight stigma in type 2 diabetes, because there's a big piece of diabetes care that people are not getting because of their weight. So this international consensus statement included people from the American Diabetes Association, the American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, national organizations in the UK, and they wanted to highlight that weight is not simply calories in, calories out. There's a lot of misconceptions in the media between what the research says and what the media says about weight, and that has created a stigma around weight that gives the idea that it's only what you eat that causes this to happen. And in fact, they highlight all these different factors. There's more than 9 factors that they talk about that dictate what somebody's body size is going to be. That can be sleep patterns, it can be gut hormones, it can be neuron signals, it can be the resting metabolic rate, it can be upsets in the circadian rhythm, it could be things in our food products. All these different things It's too simplistic or too simple to look at diabetes or weight, either one, as just being food and activity related. They're both very complex with many different factors. All right, let's move on to diabetes dilemmas. And then in my takeaway of the day, I will let you know if this image, which you can probably already tell, is bullshit or if it's legit.
Diabetes dilemmas, support and answers for your diabetes questions.
My diabetes dilemma today comes from Miss D, and she is wondering what she can do about her weight. She is worried because she can't gain weight. She's been losing weight and she can't gain it, and she's wondering what she can do. So this is a good question because it is hard sometimes to figure out, is this a diabetes thing or is this something else going on with me and what do I do? So sometimes weight loss in diabetes can be a sign that your diabetes is not in a healthy state or that your blood sugars are in unsafe ranges. So if that's not the case, there are potentially other things that are semi-related to diabetes that could cause weight loss too. For example, thyroid conditions. So our thyroid is responsible for certain hormones that help regulate our weight as well. And there is a link between people that having diabetes and people also having issues with their thyroid. There's also other health conditions that affect how your body digests food. So if you have something going on with your liver or your pancreas. So there are certain things with the digestive tract that could potentially impact your appetite or things like that. And any medicines that you take, those can affect your appetite, can make them go up or go down. So I think there's a lot of things that can affect weight. It sounds like you're really worried about this, and it is a big concern. If you are losing weight and you can't keep it on or you can't gain it back, that is a big concern. That means something's going on, whether it's diabetes related or not. So I think the first step that I would recommend is you call your primary care provider, your nurse practitioner, your doctor, whoever you see, and ask to see them. Let them know any signs or symptoms that you have, like if you have loss of appetite, if you have stomach pain. I would also ask for a referral to a dietitian. You could ask for a referral to a specialist like a GI doctor or an endocrinologist. An endocrinologist is somebody who specializes in hormones. So they see people with diabetes, but they also work with people that have other hormone things that could affect weight. Like I mentioned, the thyroid stuff and other pieces like that. I would follow up on this, Miss D. I can't, unfortunately, give you a decisive answer, but if it was me or if it was my mama or my sister and I was talking to them, that's what I would recommend.
Takeaway of the day: turning your information into action.
All right, we've got this stigmatizing image about type 2 diabetes. It's a lady that's heavier sitting on this chair that's kind of crumping underneath her, eating, and there's food spread all over everywhere. Is this image an image that should be used in education or anywhere else for that matter to represent type 2 diabetes and the risk factors for type 2 diabetes accurately? The answer to this question is bullshit. This is not a realistic, true, and accurate depiction of the risks for weight or type 2 diabetes, and it ends up leading to that stigmatizing cycle that people with diabetes are lazy, people with diabetes are heavy because they're lazy, and that people have type 2 diabetes or that they have a heavier weight is because they just eat too much and they sit in their chairs all day. So this is absolute bullshit. Not only is this not an accurate depiction of type 2 diabetes and the risk factors for type 2 diabetes, it's also highly stigmatizing. And if it is used in any kind of educational training, it should be removed immediately and replaced with something that is more respectful and accurate. Okay, so if you find something that you are curious about, diabetes bullshit or legit, send it to me. And even if it's in the off season when there's nothing going on the podcast during the summer, send it to me. I'll save it for the following season, or I might send it out in a newsletter over the summer. Don't forget, next week is the big COVID-19 cookbook marathon interview / giveaway. So you, again, have about 5 days to go over to type2andU.org. The link is in the podcast description. Sign up. It's free. It's just my way of trying to support the people that have created these cookbooks, because they are amazing people, and to support you at home who might be bored and ready to try something new. So type2andU.org, sign up for the free cookbook, and I will see you all next week. And in the meantime, don't forget, the number one thing you can do to manage your diabetes is bet on you.
Keep current on new episodes by subscribing to Type 2 and You with Meg. Be sure to share a link of today's episode to someone you know living with Type 2 diabetes. Want to learn more about today's topic or need answers to your diabetes dilemmas? Contact Megan by using the links in the podcast description or visiting her webpage, type2andu.org. This podcast is for informational purposes only and not intended as medical advice.